Well, Fáilte Rubh Golair. This I know this is a Thursday, and it isn't a Friday, but we've got things to talk about, and we may have a guest later on. Pat, is that correct? There may be
Correct.
a rapping at the door of our Zoom meeting, and an important person to enter.
Yes.
Give the
It's,
people a clue. Give the people a clue who you're talking about.
all I'm saying, he's a Derry man. That's enough.
Many people's book that isn't.
That's and in Derry particularly, it's enough.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get on with some of the things that we have planned to talk about, in addition to what we'll be talking about when and if our guest arrives. There's a public inquiry finally been decided for Pat Finucane case. And the Finucanes seemed very happy that had happened. And lots of people are saying after 35 years from the death of Pat Finucane, I'm wondering what on earth do they still not know? Because they know the British government has conceded that it was loyalist paramilitaries with state collusion were involved in and providing the weapons were involved in the death of Pat Finucane. What are they hoping to take the trail, see where the trail began? Is that the idea? The public.
Jude, I don't know what they do.
There's Garbhan now. There's Garbhan now. Oh, 1 second. Well, we'll put that on the side. Our guest is shortly to appear. A man called Garbhan Downey, but you can introduce him, Pat.
Yes.
Meanwhile,
back at the ranch. No, that public inquiry, the collusion. We'll wait for Garbhan when he comes. But that collusion case is open and shut. The difference is this is the first time the state will be responsible for it.
Garbhan is showing, but he's not. Well, maybe he's. All I can see is a little bird symbol.
There.
Well, can you hear? Oh, there we are. Welcome, Garbhan. Welcome.
Hey, Jude. How are you? Yes,
Good stuff. We weren't sure you'd make it. Pat, introduce our guest. You know him much better.
This is Garbhan Downey, journalist, author supreme, book publisher, man about town, sophisticated, and more recent times, Derry Group spokesperson.
Right. Okay.
How's that, Garbhan? Can I do any better?
That's very kind, but thank you very much for that.
Well, listen, Garbhan, tell us about this interim report. Was it that came out saying things about how many people could go to or be admitted to the university in Derry, and how long it would take, and how much it would cost?
I think everybody should go and read it first for themselves. I obviously have got a very strong view on it now, and I've read it 2 or 3 times, and I do know what's on it. But I think that everybody interested in the university issue should go to the Department for the Economy website, download it, study it very carefully, and I'm absolutely sure that within about 5 minutes they'll come to the same conclusion that we did, which is that this is a big long list of excuses of why they can't do what they promised 4 years ago, why they can't do what they promised 15 years ago, and why they can't do what they promised 60 years ago. It is at very, very best booting it down the road, out of the way, because there is no political will apparent anywhere from within the university or within Stormont to do this. But it's dressed up very well, and it takes a while to get through the various disguises. But it is very apparent that they don't have the money for this project, and they're not going to make it available. They don't have the student numbers, and they're not going to make them available effectively. They're boxing off their numbers for Belfast and Coleraine and saying, you can't have those. This is despite the fact that they never made such an agreement when they were building Belfast or building Coleraine. With regards to McGee, they never said, oh, we're not going to impact on your numbers. Obviously, Jude, if you're going to have something like this, there's going to be a bit of disruption. Right. And they're very worried that to make the best that they're saying that they can make now is 7,200. And they're worried that the other 3,000 to make it 10,000 will come from Belfast, and they clearly don't want that.
Garbhan, can they not turn around and say, right, you guys at the Derry University Group are absolute naysayers. They're talking about 700 million being made available. They're talking about 10,000 by 2030. They're saying that
is that money or students, Pat?
money.
Okay.
Sorry, 10,000 students by 2030.
No,
They're saying
actually they're not, Pat. They're not.
I noticed
They're
that
talking
figure
about
of 7,000.
7,000 by 2029,
Yeah,
which
but
is exactly what they said 4 years
Yeah,
ago.
what,
So
what
it's,
the time?
but
I can't hear what you're saying.
but see, the Stephen Kelly was on last night on BBC, and he was talking about this figure of 10,000, and there was also this figure of 700,000. And they're sort of saying, and what is it? He said now there's a sense of urgency to develop Magee campus and so on. And he's got Conor Murphy on his side, etc., etc. Are you sure that you're not going to come across to a lot of people saying, wait a minute, no matter what they offer you, you're not going to accept it?
Has he offered that then?
Yeah. But
Garbhan, has he?
actually, they haven't, and I think that's why everybody has to read this. Is that they're saying the ceiling level is 7,200. That's the market level, and ultimately there will be no scrutiny on that either. There's a major issue here about political control of this project, and also the direction of Magee. We've been for 10 years now, or we've been going 13 or 11 years now. We're going Derry University Group, and we consistently get sort of pegged as naysayers or whatever. So we worked with the Royal Irish Academy, who produced a brilliant report as to how we could have a proper cross-border Northwest University, how it could be funded. This report, 2 reports actually, were produced on this by the island's top experts, and they were roundly ignored in this. They are only looking at the single state 4-campus model offered by UU and controlled by UU. Nothing
Did they
else.
not acknowledge the fact that cross-border project was already investigated? Did they not even mention that?
They mentioned it literally in half a line. That's as much as it got.
And what did they say? Well, this makes sense, or we're going to go a different road, or what?
They're going to say that our remit is to do it under this set of circumstances, and I don't know if those circumstances were set by the Department for the Economy, if they were set by the Minister, but they're making it very clear that they're not looking at anything other than the UU model. And ultimately, the UU model is going to come first, and Derry is going to come second. And this is the problem here. This report serves UU, it doesn't serve Derry. So they're saying very, very clearly, we will not impact on our other campuses. So if you want 7,000 students or more than 7,000 students in Derry, you're going to have to find them, and you're going to have to pay for them, because we're
would
not
there
going to.
would your goal would be 10,000, I think. Is that right?
I would not limit the goal to 10,000. We look
Okay.
at Galway, which is Galway has got more than 20,000. Limerick has got
Would there be
25,000.
students? Are there students wanting to get in? I mean, is there a surplus of people wanting to get into Derry?
I think in one of the courses in Derry now, I think it's physiotherapy. It's 10 times the number of applicants as they can handle for that single course. So I think there's 100 places, and they get on average about 1,000. So that's just one single course. But obviously, and again, this is another problem with the report, they're not building the academic base first. They're deciding we're going to build the buildings first, and we'll have the infrastructure there before we necessarily say what we're going to bring here, which means things like INCOR, which was taken out of Derry. So many courses, as you're well aware, both well, and so many departments have been taken out of Derry. Are we going to get these back? How's it going to look? This report doesn't deal with any of that. This report deals with student accommodation effectively.
Garbhan, what do you say to somebody like Stephen Kelly, who's the chairperson or whatever it is of this interim report group? And he says this is substantial, a leap forward, and it's serious commitment to Derry and all the rest of it. Now, by the way, I'm putting in this, I take your point that they're saying it's staying within the 4-campus model that the UU want. No, and what you're basically saying, I take it, is Derry that's what's been wrong with Derry from the start.
Yes, that's right. And I mean, Stephen Kelly also, he has to say that, doesn't he? Because that's what he was told to do. But read the thing and make up your own mind, which is what I did. And it didn't take, as I say, it didn't take me 5 minutes to realize what this was. This is a job. It's a connivance somewhere between UU, the department, and the minister to allow UU to break New Decade, New Deal and defy an agreement made by the 2 governments, made by Julian Smith and Simon Coveney, and acquired 10,000 students for Derry, and it's allowing them all to roll back in it. Colin Eastwood was on earlier in the week, and I don't know if you saw him, and he was livid. And quite rightly so, because he spotted what was going to happen in the programme for government, which I'm sure you'll be talking about as well,
Yeah.
which was just as great a piece of waffle as was ever produced. And we knew when we saw that, because there was an indication from that that they were going to downsize the UU, or the Derry experience under UU. And so we knew that was coming, and he was right.
Garbhan, clarify for me this. Would you be content if they provided full funding and provided provision for 10,000 students under the present model, as distinct from a cross-border model?
Well, here's the problem, Jude, is we're waiting for that for 60 years, and we no longer trust UU at all.
Have you given up on that?
No. So are you saying would we be happy for them to deliver 10,000? The answer is that we wouldn't trust them to do it. No, we wouldn't trust them in any regard. And yesterday has given us yet another reason not to trust UU.
Supposing,
so
well, will you put your energies now into working on a cross-border model, or would you try to get at these guys and say, look, this is ridiculous. You're not putting funds in the West, and you should be.
Honestly, Jude, the longer this goes on, and I think if you do a straw poll in Derry, there is very, very little belief or interest in what Stormont is doing. Stormont is serving Belfast. It is serving itself. It is there, I suppose, to sustain the Northern Ireland state until, if it's a referendum, or until it is broken up with whatever regard. But you will find that there are very, very few people in Derry now who look to Stormont for answers. The Dublin government has put more money into McGee in the last 10 years than Stormont and the Department of Economy and UU. So they're the biggest single funder at the moment in UU. So we look to them more and more, and I think that's the only way that we can do. We'll look elsewhere. We'll look to Europe. We'll look to partnerships with America as well. But honestly, I think most people have given up on.
Garbhan, they're talking about the 700 million, and like I got to admit, one slightly over my head. Is that to build accommodation, or to build buildings, or is it to build student numbers?
It's my understanding is to build infrastructure. I didn't see anything in that. They're talking about expanding various departments over four. There's four of the various departments, but there were no specifics and no costings.
Well, that's exactly. I didn't see anything. That's why I'm asking you. I didn't see anything, so I don't know.
No, so basically, there's not going to be any academic development, which should precede physical build. And I think that is a major issue. And this is something, again, that was flagged up with the likes of the Royal Irish Academy before. So, you can't be doing this. This is a developers-led project. It's not an academic-led project.
Is there any
pressure
that can be put on these
campuses are unsustainable? Sorry, that's my last question. Are you saying the Fourcampus model is unsustainable because Derry will never benefit from that?
I'd say Derry should not be part of a Fourcampus model. I think that, given that Derry, and we've always said this, Derry has always been fourth priority. So we're not prepared to take that anymore. And I think we have to call it out when they do things like this. I would love to be able to come on here today and say, this is wonderful. This is exactly what we need. And, and to answer the likes of your question, Jude, say, well, maybe we should give you a chance. But every time that they get a chance, they do this. So no, our kind of, we are post-cynical. We just, as I say, we are, but in saying that, Jude, importantly, this is not about saying, no, this is looking to other models. This is looking to the Royal Irish Academy. This is looking to the Irish government. This is looking to America. This is looking to Europe and saying, right, how do we do this properly and sustain Derry? Because clearly Belfast is not interested in Derry.
When you mentioned those places like the Royal Academy, the Dublin government, Europe, America, exactly who would approach these people and what would they be asking of them? Would it be the Derry pressure group that you're part of?
Oh, I'd say we're kind of, I'm very happy to do this. We have got other people now who do it. We set up as a lobby group, but we have the likes of the Royal Irish Academy, who are a much stronger and much more respected and revered institution than we are, and much smarter than we are and will ever be. And they're prepared to put their neck in the line and say, this is what we believe of people within the Irish government who are sort of supportive of it as well. We've got academics from all over the world who are saying this, so it's not just us, and it's not a matter that we would want to take a lead in. The question that you're asking as well is germane, because it's something we have been put. How do we move it forward from now? And so that's something we've been asking ourselves. We look, if there were an independent commissioner, somebody of stature who was able to say, right, I know how to do this. The likes of, for example, a retiring minister like Simon Coveney, if, for example, he was to be given the job of independent commissioner to establish this, to have the Northwest Human Institute, for example, and that was his mission. And he would do this in partnership with the Hume Foundation. Another very important part of this as well, because they have obviously partnered with the Royal Irish Academy to produce these reports. So I think that that's what we would need next. Ideally for the North, what you would hope to have is an independent commission, a scrutiny commission that would look after all Northern universities and their various operations, because that doesn't exist at the moment as it does. You've got a higher education authority in the South. You've got various ones in Britain as well. We don't have that in the North. So the North is effectively a Wild West. Universities can do what they want. And we have been calling, as indeed the Royal Irish Academy have twice now called, for an independent scrutiny commission or oversight commission for universities in the North. We're going to need that, but also specifically for Derry, I think we need a commissioner or a commission that's going to sit and say, right, how do we sort this out?
How do the university, I'm not sure, are the universities in the South now linked? I mean, UCD, UCC and UCG used to be sort of linked colleges. Are they still linked colleges? And are
Yes, you've got the National University of Ireland as a federation of which Dublin, Maynooth, Cork, one of the training colleges, and Galway are all part.
Would they be open to what you're suggesting then? And, you know,
4 years ago, I actually launched an independent Senate campaign specifically based on that Derry would become, that Magee should join the National University of Ireland as NUI Derry at that stage. And I do believe that that's what we should be looking at. We should be looking at that sort of model at Derry. And Derry was part back pre-partition in the early 1900s, late 19th century. Derry was part of the Royal University of Ireland as well. And then when that broke up because of sectarianism, Derry went with Trinity and was with Trinity right up until the 1960s, as you're aware.
I'm just thinking that if you did establish a link or could be integrated into the National University of Ireland, it'd be like doing the Derry City thing with the FAI.
That is a perfect model, and that's and it worked, and it has been successful. And why shouldn't we do that? Because ultimately, it's Derry and Donegal together, as Pat will tell you. It's sort of there's virtually no border there at all anymore. People are just they're in and out of each other's counties all the time. Pat's in Derry, I'm sure, twice or 3 times a week. I'm in Donegal 3 or 4 times a week as well. And I'm
in Derry twice or 3 times a day.
There you go. I mean, what's to stop saying that the Irish government for buying a huge big heap of land down where you are, Pat, at Burt or Bridgend or Fawn, and saying, right, we will build here. That way they keep the money in the state, they keep the university in the state, and everybody from Derry can avail of it. And also, and Derry is the nearest big city, would do well from it. That's
by the way, Garbhan, you said something earlier on that I think
you have to. You need to pressure people. I'm cynical enough to think you have to have some kind of pressure on people to do the right thing.
I agree with you. And one of the things that we got first day is that when we launched the campaign 10 or 11 years ago, a local councillor pulled me aside and said, the only way, he repeated it, the only way you're going to get anywhere in this is if you become a non-stop pain in the arse. And now, that's not my natural position. I really don't like it, but he was right. If we stop making noise for 1 second, they will just...
But Garbhan, you know what you said earlier on, and I think it's true, that everything in Derry, every course that I heard about was grossly oversubscribed, but that was never officially confirmed by the authorities. Derry is a place that I think people would naturally gravitate to. It's like I was speaking as a Donegal man. I think it's a beautiful city. The people are warm and friendly. The place is a brilliant place. There's an atmosphere, there's a vibe, and I think if Derry was given half a chance, it would take off like a rocket. I genuinely believe it. So I think there's been a pressure to keep Derry, because Derry is so much more attractive than Coleraine for starters. And that is a minimum.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Pat, but I also think that people who are not behind it now will not go behind it, except squeeze them. You've got to squeeze them. People are like that. And I'm just wondering what forms of pressure you can put on them, Garbhan. Are there any... I mean, if you stop to think about it, there was only movement whenever, people went out and somehow confronted. I worry, Garbhan, that most people who are outside Derry don't know the situation in Derry and what the possibilities are, as you've described them.
And getting it onto the national agenda is hard. Belfast don't want it in their media because they know that it is in many ways their fault. Belfast has overheated. Do you know that?
Mm.
It's got to the extent where there's 83% of the North University students are in Belfast, which is a mad figure. There's nowhere in the world that you will find that. And also you've obviously got all the attendant problems that come with it.
Yeah.
So we're finding it increasingly difficult to get, I suppose, that platform. We do have some champions. We have got, for example, the former ambassador Jimmy Sharkey. He would be a great. Jim Sharkey would be a good advocate, and we've got various kind of people in Dublin who as well who have stood up, academics, but it is quite hard, and we do constantly have to try and reinvent ourselves and reinvent the arguments, and it's actually crazy. I mean, we wrote a book about it, which Pat has a chapter in recently as well, and that we in some ways are being portrayed as radical left for asking for what is such a fundamental civic right that John Hume was looking for 60 years ago, and that somehow, we are, they're crazies, and we're absolutely not.
Garbhan, do you think there's the cross-border element? Is that something that sticks in the craw of a lot of people in Belfast?
I don't know if it does in Belfast, much less so in Derry. We have unionists within the group who would be big supporters of it, and they're not frightened of it because they know it's a natural bond and it's a natural conglomeration, Derry and Donegal together. So it's not a political thing, rather it's a neighbourly thing. It's a community thing. So we don't get the issue, but I think in Belfast, yes, there is. And I also think I have to say that there are parts of the south that are nervous about funding going into the north. When Derry received 45 million euro for the block at McGee, there was some pushback from the south. They're saying, well, what are we doing putting money in there again? Which is why we're currently suggesting, oh, all right, well, why not build up that Inishowen or that South Inishowen area and do it there? Because if there is resistance, so yes, you're right, there is resistance both north and south, but it's not. I don't think that the problem. I think the problem is political will at Stormont. I think, and it's about keeping power at Belfast, and it's about believing that Derry in some ways doesn't deserve this, and that it doesn't merit it, that we're not Galway, that we're not Limerick, that we're not an independent city.
Well, the South's contribution to the A5 and its contribution to McGee in terms of that medical school, was it? That was noticed, and a lot of people said, that's the government in the south wanting to make the gestures showing that they're sort of friendly towards an all-Ireland unit. But that would still obtain. We all know there's a border poll coming sooner or later. It's in the interests of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael to make moves that look as if they're in sympathy with that. If they don't, they're going to damage themselves.
Well, there is politics with the big P going on here as well, in that I think that the southern government would love to be able to establish something in the north that would, I suppose, determine their Republican credentials, and something that, in many respects, would wipe Sinn Féin's eye, I think, is what they would be looking to do as well. Which worries me too, because does that make Sinn Féin less keen on the initiative if the Irish government support it, because it's not theirs?
But Garbhan, the southern government have also poured money into Altney Galvin and to City of Derry Airport. So there's more commitment to Derry from Dublin than there is from Stormont.
Come here, Pat. 2 different messages today I got from different people after reading who had read the report. They said Derry should secede, and I think that's
absolutely.
There's a genuine feeling that Derry never wanted to link to Belfast. Never, I'm certain if you ask anybody, now they're looking around and saying, well, why are we still getting this? Why is Belfast still controlling all our purse strings, controlling our ambitions, controlling our regeneration, and controlling our future?
Is your movement, Garbhan, getting sufficient coverage in the media in Derry?
Yes, I'd say we get quite a lot of coverage in the media in Derry, and we have done, and a lot of support too. I think that we've got, as time sort of has grown, we have gone from being I suppose, a fringe organisation to having our ideas at the centre of the agenda, which is really what we wanted to do from the start. I think.
Hold on a minute, Garbhan. Do you regard yesterday? Let's get this clear. This interim report. Do you reckon? And I've been trying to be careful how I'm phrasing this. Do you see that as a sort of what would you say, a manipulation or a masquerade or some sort of attempt to head you guys off at the pass?
I think that's part of it. Yeah, I think that I don't think that I don't think we would have had yesterday had it not been for the Royal Irish Academy's reports and Gareth Hargan's book. I think that both those were important steps, and they are forcing this agenda. And we keep having to force this. We shouldn't have to force this. I shouldn't have to be on shouting about this 60 years ago, or 60 years on from when Hugh and my parents were marching on this. It's just you, Jude. I would imagine you were out there too, were you?
I wasn't actually, but oh yes, I was. I was. That's. Are you talking about that cavalcade to Stormont?
Yeah, Stormont. Yeah.
We're 60 years on. Could you imagine this were Belfast? That wouldn't happen. You imagine this was Casement Park, 60 years on. My God, it would be a complete.
Garbhan, my experience, there's no point in saying things are
that
unfair.
whole Casement Park thing too. Is it an attitude? Is it, what is it?
Well, I suppose that you see, you get Cork people who would be saying the same thing about Dublin. You know, they'd be saying, God, Dublin gets everybody thing, and Dublin's swollen. So it is actually. Dublin is hugely swollen. And
but
it may be a natural tendency of the big city to sort of cast a shadow over the smaller one, but that doesn't make it right, of course.
But Cork has maintained its autonomy. It has opened new colleges. It has expanded its footprint. It has regenerated it.
It's got Apple.
It's got Apple. That's good, right?
Oh, there's a subject.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you're going to be talking about this at some stage, but there's 13 billion pounds there. People are saying that it should go to the people with Micah. Great idea. I heard Pierce Doherty saying that yesterday. And I mean, why shouldn't there be an institute set up in the Northwest that could sort of sustain and that could do, I suppose, just do good for a community for 100 years and more? There's nothing that sustains as well as a university too, as a generator for income and for ideas and for communities.
I think it'd be a good idea, you know, for your group to focus in on that 13 billion that the government in the South is so reluctant to accept, and say, well, we'll lighten your burden, brother. we'll take out 1-2 million, maybe billion rand.
Would I be right in saying that the South really aren't looking for that money, Pat?
No, well,
Jesus, well,
they weren't looking for it. They were concerned about, quote, reputational damage. They were saying that the 13 billion, they did not make a deal with Apple, and that they don't make an individual deal. And they suggest that they did was to sort of cast aspersions on the whole Irish, that it made it some sort of cowboy economy. That was what they were concerned about. They were saying that, look, we went to Europe to clear our name, that we don't make individual deals. But obviously the Commission originally made it, and now the top court, they're saying, well, something's gone on here, that Apple didn't pay 13 billion that they should have. So it's 13 billion, and apparently plus interest, by the way, Garbhan. So it could be 13.8 billion by the time it's come back. So I presume there's going to be a lot of them. There are going to be a lot of demands, and why not a university campus somewhere, Derry-Donegal?
Aye, or they could loan Stormont the money to do it. I don't think Stormont should get off the hook, by the way. That's the other thing. I think that sort of there's a challenge to be made there as well. I'm worried about how this is now institutionalized favoritism, and that.
But Garbhan, I want to come back to this one. I'm sorry for cutting across Jude again, but here's the one thing that's going to come out all the time. Here's Stephen Kelly's report, and they're talking about 700 million. They're going to say, look, this is, and Conor Murphy came out and said the department's behind it. They say this is a substantial leap forward, that this is serious commitment, and that we're serious now, and we're talking about 10,000 students. And there's this lobby group in Derry saying no, 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 no. My concern is, does that come across? You know, are they going to win the propaganda war and therefore the war eventually?
I don't think so. I think that ultimately, I suppose it comes down to the color of money and the color of and what you've had is that the only people that have put money into Derry in the past 10 years are the Dublin government, and I think that what we're doing is put up a mirror and saying, look, that's what's happening, and we're not. And this is how we do better. I mean, we're not just constantly carping and criticizing. As I say, our first thought on this is, right, how do we make this better? How do we improve this? And which I suppose takes us to other alternatives and takes us back to the Royal Irish Academy report, which is the blueprint right there, and which is the blueprint that was ignored. And in some ways, this, I suppose, was an attempt to supersede them more than it was us. And yet it is fallacious, it is hot air, it is unspecific, it is, and it's UU-led. And by the way, it is exactly what UU was saying 3 years ago. UU went to Derry Council and said, maximum we could do is 7,000. So the minister went to UU and said, we want 10,000. And the UU came back to the minister effectively now with a report saying, this is how we can do 7,000, like we said 3 years ago. So it's in many respects, we're not the negative ones here, Pat. We are the ones who are, I suppose, tired of having to turn around and saying, tell the truth for a change, guys, because we're not buying it.
This is the time, you're coming up to an election in the South. That would seem to me a very, very fruitful time to get in there and ask Sinn Féin, how's that going to form part of your platform? Fine Gael, how's it going to form part of your platform? And let's say you deny this, it's anything to do with you. I think when people their seats are at risk, that's the time to strike.
It is, I suppose, in many respects, the Southern campaign has been going for the last 6 months to a year. I mean, Sinn Féin's housing policy in the South, which they published last week, which was very detailed and very specific and very meticulous, and so totally different to the two reports that we've seen this week. You're wondering, how could the same people put their name to the two different reports? Because you've got many issues in the South, I suppose, and housing being the major one in our part of the world at the moment. So in many respects, I don't expect us to be a major factor. I do think that the South and the Southern government can look with legitimacy and point to McGee and saying, we're doing
Garbhan, just to follow on from Jude's point, this whole campaign, it's been notable by the absence of screaming from local politicians in Derry, particularly Sinn Féin, which I find amazing. What's your answer to that? Is Sinn Féin and Derry being led by the nose in Belfast have been told to shut up? What?
I think what we're seeing in Sinn Féin at the moment, and I have to say this is real democratic centralism like has never been deployed before in Ireland. I think that there are hymn sheets drawn up in Connolly House and they're passed around and you sing off that. I don't see any original thought at all from Sinn Féin and Derry. And it's disturbing because it was never the way before. There was so much dynamism about Sinn Féin, particularly in the sort of in the 80s, 90s and the early 2000s. And you just see now that there's no critical thought, there's no original thought. It's very, very difficult. We have engaged with individuals, and we've engaged this with a lot of individual Sinn Féiners.
But they haven't gone public, Garbhan. They haven't gone public.
No, and they won't, because there's such a rigid rod now that runs through Sinn Féin that people don't do it. You can't talk to a Sinn Féiner now on a journalistic query without a press officer being present. It's got to the stage where, as I say, it's democratic centralism like I've never seen before.
We're down to just about a minute, Garbhan. Can I just ask a final question? Can we look forward to seeing any specific move by your group or by other groups that would have your interests at heart in the next, say, between now and Christmas?
I would say the next big move, yes, I'd say that we're certainly going to be lobbying with the various parties for in the road to the Southern election. I think that you're looking at probably we're going to publish a full response to the interim report. I think you're going to see an update of Garrett Harrigan's book, which will be very important. And I would hope as well that we're going to have further dialogue with the Royal Irish Academy towards their goals.
Okay, very interesting, Garbhan. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Garbhan.
And we'd be delighted to have you back if there's another occasion. Okay, thanks very much. All the best.
Thanks, Garbhan.
Delighted to join you.
Thank
you very much, Jude.
Okay.
Thanks, Pat.
See ya.